Are you ready to unlock your full potential and maximize your productivity? Look no further than Productivity Smarts, the ultimate audio podcast hosted by renowned productivity expert Gerald J. Leonard. In every episode, Gerald shares captivating stories, invaluable tips, and cutting-edge strategies that will transform the way you approach productivity. Whether you're looking to reduce stress, overcome overwhelm, or simply get more done in less time, Productivity Smarts has got you covered. But that's not all. You'll also gain inspiration from real-life success stories of individuals who have achieved greatness through productivity. Plus, you'll learn the latest tools, techniques, and habits that will help you achieve a new level of happiness and fulfillment in your personal and professional life. So why wait? Join us every week as we delve into the exciting world of productivity and help you unleash your full potential. Get ready to take your productivity to the next level with Productivity Smarts. As a productivity expert and host of the Productivity Smarts podcast, Gerald J. Leonard has been a proud supporter of Kiva since 2011. Kiva is a non-profit organization that helps entrepreneurs in third world countries access the capital they need to start or grow their businesses. By making a small loan through Kiva, you can help these entrepreneurs achieve their dreams, support their families, and contribute to their local economies. And with a repayment rate of over 96%, your loan can be re-lent to another entrepreneur once it's repaid, creating a ripple effect of positive change. So if you're looking for a meaningful way to make a difference in the world, consider making a loan through Kiva. With loans as small as $25, anyone can be a micro-lender and help change lives. Visit kiva.org to learn more and start lending today.
All right, today I'm speaking to Mike Silly, inclusive leadership strategist, executive coach, and author of Mindset Unlocked: How Leaders, Learners, and Dreamers Crush Self-Doubt and Unlock Their Potential. He's a co-founder of X Inc. Global, or Zinc. Mike shares how unlocking your mindset can break the cycle of imposter syndrome, amplify your leadership, and transform not just how you work, but how you show up for work and in your personal life. Mike, how are you?
I am very well, thanks, Gerald, and I really do appreciate being invited onto your show.
Excellent, excellent. Well, listen, I'm really happy to have you here. And I'm not sure if you had a chance to listen to any of the other shows recently, but I always start off with a couple of questions.
Okay.
And what is your favorite style of music? Because I'm a musician, so I have to know, what is your favorite style of musician?
To answer that question, it's difficult because I generally love all types of predominantly Black music, and that includes things like rock and roll. But, you know, R&B, soul music, rap music, I like the whole genre, you know.
Excellent.
So I can't pinpoint down to one.
That's fine. That's fine. That's fair. So let me ask you, do you have a favorite artist or a favorite song?
No, you know, I can go from the Jacksons to Prince to James Brown to some of the great jazz musicians like Miles Davis. It just, you know, music depends on my mood and how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And it has the power to constantly uplift you, even when you are in your lowest moments, you know?
Exactly.
So, yeah, I love it.
In fact, it has more than that, because as a musician, if you play music, when you're playing, it actually rewires your brain. It includes almost every sense that we have, except probably the sense of smell, but it probably plays a part in there too somewhere. But the sense of sight, the sense of hearing, the sense of feel and taste and touch, all of that is included in music. And so your whole brain becomes alive when you're, hearing or listening to good music, or you're able to play really good music. So let me ask you this question, because I'm really excited to talk to you after reading your book, Mindset Unlocked. Out of all of the books that I've done I read a lot, right, obviously, and I've done a lot of interviews with authors. I felt like this was probably one of the better books that I've read on this topic, where you really were able to not only just talk about the strategies, but your experience of how you came about the strategy. And that's, to me, one of the reasons why it's really powerful, is because you share and you take the reader along your journey of what you struggled with.
Yeah.
and then how you use these tools to overcome them. So let me ask you, what do you think has made you successful throughout your career? If you could name one thing that you had to deal with that made you successful throughout your career.
I think it's just been the ability to push through and succeed. So whenever I was given a particular goal or a challenge,
Yeah,
in my mind, it was not only am I going to achieve that goal, but I'm going to exceed it. And that's what I worked on. Anytime I managed teams, it was like, here's our goal. If my manager gave me a particular goal, I would set that goal higher. And that's what I'd be sharing with my team. That's what we're going after, the higher number.
right. So that way, you know you're going to hit your manager's goal because that's below what you're really going after. That's a really good strategy.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you kind of like put out a stretch goal in front of your team and for yourself. So
Yeah.
even if you don't make your stretch goal, you still met the goal that is expected of you and your team. But obviously, the team wants to meet that stretch
Yeah.
goal as well without knowing it's a stretch goal.
Oh, and I can tell you, I would always be upset if I didn't meet the stretch. Even if I met the standard goal, if I didn't
Yeah,
meet the stretch, I would not be fully upset with myself, but I'd be figuring out why did I not get there, what was missing, and start thinking about that. So it's a constant cycle of learning, particularly from when you've missed targets or you've failed at something, you've got to learn from it and keep driving forward.
right. Now, before I started the recording, we were starting a conversation, and this wasn't even one of the questions I had on my list of things to talk to you about, but I thought it would be really important to talk about and just jump right in. And because it's something that, as I was reading through your book, that kind of came to my mind was as you're going up the ladder of success, right? Let's say you've been at this for a while and you've achieved a certain amount of success, and now a setback, a misstep or mistake is a much bigger deal because you're playing at a much higher level in your business and your life and so on and so forth. It seems like these tools that we just talked about are just as critically important as you're continually traversing that ladder upward as is when you're first getting started.
Absolutely. The thing is that you'll always have some level of imposter syndrome,
Mm,
right? And particularly if you are working in business in the corporate world and you have an aspiration to move up the ladder,
right.
the next ladder that you move up to, it all starts again simply because you move out of what was your comfort zone. You're in a new place now, might be added pressure to perform or to deliver. So you're in that place of what's known as a fear zone. You've come out of the comfort, you've got into a fear zone.
Okay.
Now, there's only two ways to go, right? If you're scared and you're worried and you start shrinking, you will quickly retreat back to your comfort zone. But if you push through that, then you move into what's known as a growth zone. And that's where eventually you'll be learning, you'll become comfortable, you'll increase your competencies and your abilities to be successful. But you've
Right.
got to get through that hard part, that fear zone. You've got to get through there.
So what you're saying is every single time, I'm just going to take myself for example.
Okay.
Every single time I'm going, hey, I'm going to go to the next level. I'm going to be, writing for major magazines. I want to do this. I want to take my business to this next level. That as soon as I do that and start working there, I leave my comfort zone. I go into a fear zone. And the only way I can get out of that fear zone is I'm going to either shrink back to the comfort or I have to go into a growth zone.
Yeah. However, I'll add to that.
Okay.
However, the more that you're doing this, you can move into a fear zone with confidence, right?
Yeah.
You can move into a fear zone, not worrying about failure. One of the biggest problems with imposter syndrome is fear of failure.
Yeah.
If you're the type of person that you're not too worried about failure because you are learning from it, you'll push through the fear zone with ease. And, the biggest people that suffer from imposter syndrome are really suffering from fear of failure.
Right. It's a fixed mindset, right? It's the idea
Absolutely.
of a fixed mindset. And this just popped in my mind too, and this wasn't on my list. And that is Angela Duckworth in a video, she talks about the growth mindset. And she also talks about it from a standpoint that what makes the growth mindset work is the concept of grit.
Mm.
Being gritty, right? Being someone who's kind of willing to grab the bull by the horns, or just kind of, hey, this is not going to be easy. I'm going to face the challenge. I'm going to embrace the fact that this is going to be tough, but I'm going to move forward and I'm going to do the things I need to do. I'm going to be disciplined. I'm going to just kind of keep going. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is about resilience. And one of the
Yeah,
key things is being resilient, being able to push through the challenges, being able to deal with the pressure of what you're facing and not quickly turn a retreat. Hard work, people say hard work pays off. But if you can actually get through those obstacles, find maybe a different route to take, or a different solution to get you to
right.
where you want to get to. She's talking about resilience and being resilient.
In fact, you have a chapter in your book that you talk about resilience. And I like the way you talk about it because you talk about it from the standpoint of bouncing forward. You kind of hear the idea of bouncing back, right?
Yeah.
But bouncing back means that wherever you fell, that you're just getting back to where you were.
Yeah.
Bouncing forward, being resilient means you're not just getting back to where you were, but you're actually, Steve Harrison talks about stumbling forward, right?
Mhm.
I think John Maxwell talks about that if you fall forward, at least if you get up from where your face is,
Yeah.
you kind of move forward a little bit, even if you fail,
Yeah.
right? So talk to me about this concept of bouncing forward, and what are one or two habits or strategies that someone can use to stay productive from a setback while they're bouncing forward?
Yeah. Well, I think that, one of the things that you need to think about is, yes, if you can start with, there are things that are going to fail. Not everything is going to work.
Right.
And if you get the mindset of, right, let me take that, but I'm not going to stop at that point. I have to step on, I have to move to the next stage, and I'll take that learning with me,
Yeah.
but I have to move forward and face whatever that next challenge might look like. And that's kind of bouncing forward. It's like you're learning as you're going along,
Yeah.
but you're not afraid to keep moving forward. And again, it's the resilient thing that comes
Right.
into play again. The whole thing around it is, for every obstacle you come up against or every failure that you find, is how you manage through that process.
Right.
And the best way to manage through it is keep moving forward.
Excellent. Excellent. I want to step back. As we started this conversation, like I said, this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. And I was really excited when we met and you shared your book with me, because I thought, man, I'd love to have this guy on my podcast to really, one, I want to read your book for myself. And then two, we had such a great conversation. But in your book, you talk about this psychological barriers to adopting a growth mindset, right?
Yeah.
What is one invisible mindset block that often drains productivity, and how can people identify it and how can they overcome it?
Yeah. I mentioned it earlier on. I think one of the biggest psychological blocks is having that fear of failure.
Yeah,
Now, you've got to understand that failure is not the opposite of success, right? Failure, you must see it as a prerequisite to success.
right.
And if you can see it as a prerequisite to success, it means that you're an individual that will learn from your failures and you'll move forward. So I think the biggest obstacle, particularly very senior people, you imagine a CEO that's got to stand up and talk about, say, a product failure in their big organization, and they have to stand in front of the media or whatever. They will have that fear inside. They have to come across very confident
Right.
and, in their ability to talk about whatever the problems were and how they're going to take that forward, what they're going to do about it. So imposter syndrome happens with absolutely everybody. It's not just the ordinary person trying to kind of make it through their career. It's the most senior people in an organization. It's government leaders. It's all types of people like that. But, have this fear of failure. It's just how they deal with it, that level of confidence or presence that they developed That inside, it's almost like, the scenario of watching a duck on a pond, looking all serene, but below the surface, that really kind of flapping their legs. It's
Exactly.
just, yeah, it's just how you deal with your internal fears,
Yeah.
not allowing it to kind of expose you and get outside of you.
And thinking about when you mentioned that the duck, I kind of visualized the duck and, the feet really pedaling really quickly. But what you see above the surface is a calm duck.
Yeah,
Right?
uh,
You never see a duck sitting there like worried,
yeah,
sweating, overwhelmed, but you know that they're pedaling really fiercely underneath the water. And it made me think about, I don't want to jump into it right now, but it made me think about the steps that you have at the end of the book of things
mm,
that people can do that can become habits. And what came to my mind was that for us being that duck is we need to stay calm under pressure, but the pedaling are the habits
yeah,
that we need to develop and make into a routine so that if we're doing these routine things, learning
mm,
consistently, developing, working on our health, working on nutrition, yoga, meditation, all those things, that's the pedaling that needs to happen. But if we do it in the right order with the right habits, then we can be like that duck.
yeah.
On the top part, we're serene. We seem like we got it all together, but we're working our process.
Mm, absolutely. It's interesting because that feeling, I get that feeling all the time. If I'm
Yeah.
standing on stage speaking to a group, the first few moments when I'm introduced, it first might only be seconds, but I get this huge fear that builds up inside of me. Not that you could see it,
Right.
no one else can see it.
Right.
But then once I've said my first sentence, everything just relaxes and I move forward. But it's just that initial
Yeah.
age. And I think that, wow, there's a lot of people that probably go through the same.
Oh yeah, every performer, everybody goes through that because it is one of those things where it's like, okay, how am I going to do? And then you're like, oh, I'm familiar with this place.
Yeah,
It's kind of like that fear, and but instead of shrinking back, you step into that growth
yeah.
zone or that new comfort zone, and you just move forward. And in fact, let me ask you about this with fear, because the fear of failure can create a freeze mindset, right? Where sometimes people don't step back, but in a way they do, but what they end up doing is just stopping.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the ostrich put the head in the sand, the fainting goat kind of thing. They
Mm.
just freeze. What strategies do you recommend when someone's facing a situation where they're faced with the fear of failure right in that moment?
Yeah.
How do they move forward without sabotaging their productivity or self-doubt?
But I think what they have to think about is, why are they there and how did they get there?
Right,
I, they got there on some level of ability or skill or level of knowledge.
right,
So what is it that is stopping them in their tracks? You have to think about, what value am I bringing to
yeah,
my audience? And, the audience are probably eager to hear what knowledge you have or what skill you're bringing.
right,
So the mindset has to think, right, well, they're here to listen to my level of expertise or, my skill. If you're like you being a musician,
right,
listening to you play a great tune, a great song, you might be thinking, wow, there's so many people out there. Can I actually play? But you have to step through that by thinking, I am good enough.
right,
I'm here for a reason. People have invited me. They want to see me. They want to hear me. Um, and allow that to uplift you. Allow that to be something that is going to take you through that initial level of blankness that you have, or that blockage, to be able
right.
to step through it. Now, one of the things is that if you allow that to completely freeze you,
Mhm.
what you're then allowing is, you are building on a fixed mindset. You are continually building on a fixed mindset,
Right,
which you're going to start telling yourself eventually, I'm not good enough,
right,
to do this anymore. I cannot get any better than where I am at today.
right.
And so you're already kind of fixing your abilities, your knowledge, your intelligence, your skills, all of those things.
Exactly. The way I look at it too is sometimes in that moment, science has called it the amygdala hijack, right? There's a part of our brain called the amygdala that when we're faced with fear, it just releases all these chemicals and it just kind of like paralyzes you,
Yeah.
right? And that's not
Right.
good if you're caught, if you're being chased by a bear, you don't want to have that happen. Because
Yeah.
you want
That's
to be able to run.
freeze, right?
Exactly. You want to be able to run and not just freeze.
Yeah.
And, in that situation, you have to figure out how to move forward.
Mm,
And sometimes, when you're in that situation, before you step on stage or before you walk into the meeting, if you feel that, sometimes doing something called box breathing, right? Or, some kind of controlled breathing where
mm,
you just kind of put yourself in a state, you allow your breath to help you calm your body, calm your mindset, because eventually, all of that emotion is just neurochemicals.
mm.
And if you breathe yourself through it, within 90 seconds, they'll pass.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of put yourself to a place where you can, again, if you're doing the duck activities on a daily basis, talking positive to yourself, affirmations, and so on, you can kind of talk yourself through that and move forward, right?
Yeah.
Now, in the fast-paced environment that we're in today with AI, with globalization, and it's not just in one corner of the world, right? Whether it's politics or whatever, things are just happening so fast.
Mm.
And it's so much because, content is being created faster than anything else. We're just awash in information. You know, with embracing all this change, what are some practical ways we can train our brain to be more adaptive and less reactive in this fast-paced environment that we're finding ourselves?
I think what you need to do is sometimes step away from that, but continual practice in anything, whether it's continually just put yourself outside of your comfort zone,
Right.
because the more you can do that, the more comfortable you will become with it. And that will allow you then to move forward into whatever that next level of fear might be. But it's like anything, if you're going to do a presentation, for example, practice, practice, and practice again, which is what people are told. It's like for any skill, whether you're a musician, whether you're an athlete, you probably heard the saying, right, that it takes 10,000 hours of
Yeah, yeah.
practice training to get good. Maybe it's not 10,000 hours needed to improve a presentation, but I think you need to make sure that you can practice what it is that you're about to do if you can. Obviously, you'll always get to that moment of truth when you're doing it live or doing it for real. I'm hoping, though, that at that particular point, you would have practiced so much that it will just feel like a practice session
Exactly.
and you'll be comfortable doing it.
Exactly. And that's really one of the goals of a musician is that you practice the way you want to perform.
Mm.
And, there are times where you're, doing deliberate practice where you're working on something new that you're not going to perform.
Yep.
But before you get to the point where you're performing it, you want to just play it so much that if somebody woke you up at 2 o'clock in the morning and said the house is on fire and they handed you a guitar or they handed you the speech, as you're running out the house, you could do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you've just learned it so well.
Yeah. I often think as well, because it's happened to me many times. I've made mistakes on
Yeah,
stage
we all have.
that people haven't noticed.
Yeah,
But they're the things that can freeze you. If you made a mistake, you might think, oh God, what do I do next? What do I do next? But if you just, again, carry on through that, most of the time, it will go unnoticed.
exactly, exactly. In jazz, they say there's no bad note because
There
if
you
you're
go.
playing and you land on a bad note,
Yeah.
the note before to the note afterwards is going to be a good note, and if you go back to the bad note, it starts sounding cool. Like, oh wow, he meant to do that.
Yeah. 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 For me, like that, jazz is
You
all about
mentioned in the book like post-it notes and some of the other accidents that were accidents in business that actually became products, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Google gives their people time to make mistakes.
Yes. Yeah.
Satya Nadella with Microsoft, you talk about him in the book, where it's okay to fail as
Yeah.
long as that failure becomes a learning. And so it's no longer failure.
Yeah.
That was a
Yeah.
learning opportunity. And now how can we build off of it?
Absolutely. Yeah. That was one of the companies I worked for 8 years as well. A great company with that mindset. It's funny because I left the company just after Satya became the CEO.
Right.
But what he did beyond that has been absolutely amazing, incredible, because as you quite rightly said, he has made it okay for people to try things and fail and learn from it
Right.
and move forward. And maybe the culture wasn't always that way back then,
Right.
but you can imagine if you allow that to happen with your employees, what they will give you is so much more just through having a level of confidence and a growth mindset to be able to bring their best ideas and inventions to the table without fear of failure, without fear of discipline or anything like that. So
Exactly.
it does make a huge difference.
Exactly. And that requires an area of emotional intelligence. And that's the next thing I wanted to share, talk
Mm.
about a little bit here. Sometimes emotional intelligence can be overlooked. How does improving emotional self awareness translate into better focus, decision making, and team productivity?
Yeah. So what I would say is, emotional intelligence, particularly if you're a leader or a manager, it is about understanding the people in your team. It is about taking time to listen to them, taking time to understand what unique skills they've got compared to the rest of the team, because not everybody is the same.
Right.
It's about allowing individuals to be human, to share their fears, to share their concerns, to share their aspirations. And you, as a leader, being able to understand that and then to help that individual through that process. I've worked as a senior leader for 25 years. And, one of the key things is if you are not aware of the people that you're leading, or if you even don't care about it, which is what some leaders are like, you'll find how quickly you will lose their respect, you'll lose their loyalty going forward. But if you do care and you show all of that, my God, they'll give you so much more than what you bargained for.
Exactly.
So emotional intelligence, particularly in this day and age now, is quite critical. It's not a soft skill, it's a critical kind of business tactic that leaders have to develop and make sure that they're behaving in the right way
Right.
to understand people.
Excellent. Well, listen, as we get ready to wrap this up here, this has been a great conversation. I definitely want to recommend people to get your book, Mindset Unlocked. I mean, we're just scratching the surface on some of the
Mm,
things that you've put in there. But what I like about it is you have really good practicals and you end the book with an essential tips or
mm.
things that people need to think about. Can you share just one daily practice from this list that, someone who's listening and saying, man, I need to really work on this area? And there's so much we've talked about. What's the one thing that they can work on to build that growth mindset and boost their output?
I think the biggest thing for me is I think one and I cannot remember which number it's at, but don't fall in love with tradition.
Mm,
Okay. The world is changing. So if you get stuck in the status quo of
yeah,
things, you're already being left behind.
yeah,
So you've got to keep moving forward. You've got to keep innovating. You've got to keep embracing the changes that are coming all the time, whether it's through technology, through process, through many other things. But do not fall in love with tradition, because I think that's a trap that many people fall into.
exactly. And that's so important because I do remember that part of the book where you talk about some of the ones that are iconic for not moving forward, like Blockbuster or,
Yeah, Kodak. Yeah.
Kodak or Nokia. There's a plethora of Toys R Us.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of them were really great, brands that failed to innovate and failed
Yeah.
to look around the corner to see what was coming up next and keep their ear to the ground. Like
Mm.
right now, the biggest thing is AI.
AI. Yeah.
And, there are major companies saying, hey, in a few years, we're going to be scaling back our employees. And they're telling people we will be scaling back from people who don't know anything about AI, but leveraging people who know AI. Because what they're looking at is saying, hey, we've realized that we can get 10x productivity
Mm.
from someone who knows how to use AI. Not just they've read about it and went to like a free course, but somebody who really understands how to leverage the technology, how to do prompt engineering and some of the things and the concepts, because it is radically transformative for a
Yeah.
business to use this new technology.
Absolutely. I think that the reality of it is that any new technology, and we talk about the various industrial revolutions over the past 100 odd years will always disrupt. They're always going to displace, but they're always going to provide opportunity.
Right.
And AI is a perfect example of that, where I've heard lots of people say, oh, AI is going to take all of our jobs. But actually, it's not. But what it will do is it will take the jobs of those who don't embrace it.
Right.
But those who do embrace it, like you've mentioned, they're the ones who will have the opportunities going
It's going to create new jobs. It's going to create
Absolutely.
new opportunities and new jobs and new things to do. And if you don't have those new skills,
Yeah.
then you're pretty much lost, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah.
in that standpoint. Listen, Mike, this has been a great conversation. I could talk to you all day about this stuff. And again, you have a great book that I really embraced it and really loved and enjoyed reading. Again, Mindset Unlock: How Leaders, Learners, and Dreamers Crush Self-Doubt and Unlock True Potential. Mike, where can people learn more about you? Where can they get your book and
Yeah.
contact you if they're interested?
Yeah, the book is available on Amazon.
Okay.
People can reach out to me either on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to connect with people on LinkedIn and ask questions. And of course, if anybody needs help with having imposter syndrome or trying to grow a growth mindset or inclusive leadership, I offer those as services where I'm more than happy to help people as well. And my website still being further developed, but it's www.zincglobal, but Zinc is spelled with an X, and then there's a hyphen, INC.
Yeah.
X is the transformation, INC is inclusion, which is where the name actually comes from. But yeah, that's where you can reach me. The book, as I mentioned, is available on Amazon in most locations around the world.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, Mike, it's been a pleasure talking with you, and I've really enjoyed our time together.
Thank you so much. It has been a pleasure to be on your show, and it's been great talking to you too, Gerald. Thank you so much.
Excellent.
If you're enjoying the content and finding it valuable, we would appreciate it if you could take a moment and leave us a review. Your feedback is important to us and helps us reach a wider audience. If you leave us a 5-star review, it would mean the world to us. Not only does it help us improve the podcast, but it also helps us attract more sponsors and grow our community. Thank you again for your support and for listening to the Productivity Smarts podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to Productivity Smarts, where we help you achieve your goals and live your best life. We hope you've gained valuable insights and actionable strategies to boost your productivity and increase your happiness and fulfillment. Remember to apply what you've learned and keep striving towards your goals. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our podcast for more inspiring episodes and expert advice from our host, Gerald J. Leonard. Until next time, keep pushing forward and unleashing your productivity smarts.